Welcome to the Mental Health Bootcamp podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
This is the podcast where four therapists, three of us Canadian, one of us American, serve you cutting edge mental health knowledge. I'm Dr. Ryan Howes, a clinical psychologist from Pasadena, California.
And I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis, a registered clinical counselor from Coquitlam.
And I'm Joanna Boyd, also a registered clinical counselor from Coquitlam.
And I'm Chris Boyd, psychotherapist from the Greater Vancouver area.
Welcome, everybody. Great to see everyone again. Enjoying the dog days of summer, I hope.
Oh man, I'm getting so many bites. I got a bite here and a bite there. Yeah, the mosquitoes are loving me right now. So definitely still not looking, or I'm looking forward to that part going away once it gets cooler. But otherwise.
Are your mosquitoes large mosquitoes or tiny mosquitoes?
I think we have a mix.
Okay.
I've seen both with my own eyes, but I think they're pretty decent size.
Yeah.
I don't know what Brooke and Chris would say.
I feel like they're average, but I think that's just because that's what we have here. Like, I think I'm normalizing whatever one we have. So I don't know if they're relatively large or small comparative to other areas of the world.
They seem pretty small to me, but that's just my gut feeling. Yeah.
I've lived in Oregon and I've lived in California. It seems like the Oregon mosquitoes were larger. They're a little smaller here in California, but they are still just as much of a nuisance and they bother me.
All right, then.
Well, all right, then. So that's our pestilence report for the evening. And I hope that everyone is doing good things for their mental health these days. Everyone's staying mentally healthy. Are you applying good self-care? Maybe you need to listen back to episode 1 of the Mental Health Bootcamp podcast. Okay.
We're all waiting for someone else to talk. I think I'm self-cared. I think I'm doing pretty good. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just enjoying that moment of silence, just unwinding.
Having a mindful moment.
A mindful moment. Yeah.
Yep. Took a nice swim after work at the lake. So that's part of my self-care kind of after. That was really nice and very refreshing. So that was good. Yeah.
Wow.
Ryan, you look surprised.
Is the lake water warm?
It's the one I went to was actually quite warm. We also have another one nearby that's quite the opposite. It's quite cold, but yeah, no, it's very nice, very pleasant.
Oh, sounds great. Just to get off work and go swim in a lake. I really love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not too far from my house, so I'm really fortunate.
We don't have any water here in Southern California except for concrete little gullies that we call rivers and in the ocean. But yeah, I miss lakes and rivers. So I'm envious. It sounds great.
Do you ever go swimming in the ocean?
I have, for sure. I haven't recently, but every once in a while they have these alerts saying, "Oh, sorry guys, too much sewage in the ocean. Can't go swimming right now."
Yeah, that happens up here too.
A little bit of a turn off on the old ocean swim.
Do you have like a go-to beach that you go to down there?
I do. I like going to Manhattan Beach and Hermosa Beach. I like those beaches the best, which are kind of south of the airport, south of Santa Monica. But really nice areas and not too far away from where I live in Pasadena area. So about 45 minutes or so without traffic. Yeah, it's great. I like being close to the beach. Some beaches, not all beaches, but some beaches have fire pits, and that's always nice. Like sunset, have a nice big fire.
Nice.
Those are fun too. Yes, good summertime activities. You know what is another good summertime activity? Reading and book clubs.
Great.
Right?
It's gonna be like watching the Summer Olympics. That's what I was gonna say. But yes,
too.
reading.
Yes. Yeah.
Speaking of, we have a book club coming up soon.
Yeah.
In 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, what book are we reading again?
I actually just finished it. It's the More or Less Definitive Guide to Self-Care by Anna Borges. It's a great book.
That's not our book club book, though, is it? Chris, you're being
It
facetious.
is called What Happened to You? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing. And it's by Bruce Perry, Dr. Bruce Perry, and Oprah.
Yeah. So I'm about halfway through the book and I'm listening to it. I'm not
Okay.
reading it. I don't know. Joanna, are you going to read it or listen?
You know what? I keep forgetting to cancel my prescription to Audible, so I'll be listening to it. Subscription, not prescription.
Yeah.
But-
I was like, okay.
Yep. Thank goodness I caught myself. But yes, I'll be listening to it.
Yeah. So and I'm sure Ryan and Chris will be listening as well. But you'll see it's interesting. It's a bit more conversational. So conversations is a good word to have in the subtitle there. So Bruce Perry kind of does his thing, and then Oprah is Oprah. So she's a bit of a host. So she summarizes, connects some dots, and so it kind of goes back and forth that way throughout the book with little snippets, audio snippets of segments of her show as well, as she's highlighting different examples. So it's yeah, it's really interesting to listen to. I'm curious what it would look like as a book. But
Oh, that is interesting. Sounds entertaining. Sounds like almost like a drama. It's great. Cool. All right. Well, we will get on that. What happened to you? And we'll be discussing it in a few weeks. So run, don't walk. Go grab your copy now and join us for a discussion in 2 or 3 weeks. Okay.
perfect.
Well, you guys,
Okay.
are we ready for the ambush?
I believe so.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mhm.
The ambush. One of us knows the topic, the other 3 don't. I am the ambusher tonight. And it's a little different topic I've got for you guys. I invite you to put on your therapist hats. I mean, that's kind of our draw, right? We're 4 therapists. So let's think about this one. All right. Not something we've talked about before or written about before, I don't think. All right, that's enough of a lead up. You ready? Here comes the ambush.
Mm-hmm.
Stuckness and breakthroughs. What causes us to get stuck? Like in a job or a relationship or a mindset or an emotion or a habit. What causes us to get stuck and how can we break through? Is gradual change preferable to breakthrough? Can we work at breakthroughs or do they spontaneously happen? You get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
This comes, let me explain it or give you the context here. Through the decades of working with clients, stuckness tends to be a theme that some people bring in, right? I'm sure you've worked with folks who say, I feel stuck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm trapped in my job or I'm in a relationship or I have a habit of or a pattern of getting into relationships that have this similar sort of theme. You know, I'm always drawn to someone who is less into me and I'm more into them, you know, whatever that might be. I feel stuck or trapped in something. And they want to know, how do I change this, right? And oftentimes people are looking for the breakthrough. And the thing is sometimes breakthroughs happen. They're like a big, and I guess I would define a breakthrough as like a more immediate transformation that someone experiences that might alter their life a great degree in a short amount of time. And so those do happen. People turn around their life in some ways, or they suddenly wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm never drinking again, or I'm quitting my job and I'm going to go follow my passions or something like that. I'm leaving this bad relationship, whatever it is. But for a lot of our clients, it's a more gradual process, right? They go through gradual change and they, you know, need to change one little thing at a time. And, you know, those add up over time, but it takes a while. So I just want to discuss stuckness and breakthroughs with you guys. Maybe we can have some examples and talk through, like in your own life, or when you're, some cleverly disguised clients or whatever that might be, what that looks like.
It's a great topic.
Hmm.
I think a lot of clients feel stuck. I think in some ways, I would dare to say every client feels stuck, which is why they're reaching out for help, right? There's
Sure.
something that they're just having a hard time changing. And I agree with you, Ryan. There's some clients where they just kind of need that like aha light bulb moment, and whether that's like a moment of realization or clarity, or some of the dots connected and big change happens like rapidly after that. And other clients, it's not that simple, right?
I think a lot of people would love to have that aha, lightning bolt sort of a moment. Like, whoa, suddenly everything all makes sense, or suddenly I'm transformed. That's why I asked the part of, can we work at like kind of trying to create some of that? Can we facilitate a breakthrough, or do they spontaneously happen? Because it seems like sometimes they just seem like serendipitous. Like, I was walking through the forest. Like, who was it? Shapiro. I was walking through the forest, and suddenly I discovered EMDR, and now I have this healing modality.
It's so interesting, because I think a lot of the times working with people, you might be like, okay, I'm going to share this little tidbit and this insight that I see, and it's just going to click with them. And then it doesn't do that all the time. And you're like, dang it, that didn't sit. And you're just like, shoot. And then all of a sudden they because they maybe not were ready to hear it, but then a session or two later, they might say, so I read this thing, or I heard from this person, and bam. And I was like, I told you that. But they obviously came about it their own way. But I just, in my head, I'm like, dang it. But obviously, however they get to that point of being ready to receive the information, or maybe they heard it in a way that made sense to them or whatever. But I find that has happened a few times, and I'm like, okay, so maybe the profound things I'm sharing are not ready to be, maybe they're not profound, or they're not ready to be received. But yeah, anyways.
Joanna, I totally resonate with what you're saying. Yeah. Sometimes you just like deliver this thing and you think it's going to be great, and the client just kind of like stares at you. And then changes the topic.
Yeah, they're like, and so, well, I was like, no,
and then it was at the grocery store, and I'm like, but did you hear what I said? Like, you can't really say that at therapy. You're just gonna go where they go. But totally, I know the look what you're talking about, like the computing, taking 2 seconds. Yeah. Anyways, what I was saying is, and then they totally switch.
Yeah, I've shared that a similar sort of analogy with students in the past. Like, you'll be sometimes working with a client, and it's not just clients, sometimes these are just your loved ones or people around you, friends, in this, they say, you know what, every time I turn right, I get punched. And then you say, well, maybe you should turn left. Whatever. Every time I turn right, I get punched. It happens again. Gosh, yesterday I turned right and I got punched. Well, maybe you should turn left. And then they come in one day and say, oh my gosh, maybe I should turn left. Right? You're like,
Yep.
Yeah, that's
I know.
Right. That's right.
Similar thing was, it's trying to teach about breathing and all of this, and then like a while later they're like, so I listened to a podcast and it talked about breathing, and it just really explained it in a way, and I was like, and she's like, it's just been, it just made sense to me. And I'm like, okay. So I tried to learn, I tried to be like, what was it that hit home there, etc.
Yeah, of course.
It's just kind of finding their things, but it's just, anyways.
Of course. And we
obviously can't force something.
And we recognize, yes, we can't force it. We recognize that it's more important for them to gain the insight than for us to get credit for it, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. I didn't say that was something we already did. I was just like, I just want to learn more about how they came across it and what worked for them. But
and you're happy for them as well. The opposite sometimes happens too, where
that's what I was just about to say. Yeah,
you say something and then they're like, oh wow, that was really profound, can you say that again? Like, then you try to paraphrase it.
Oh, I was thinking the opposite, where they come back in like in a future session and they're like, and then you said this thing that really stuck with me, and they tell you what you said and you're like, there's no way I said that. Like, just the language that they're using, or like you remember the moment in your head, you're like, that is not what I said. But you try and like work with where they're at and summarize like why that maybe resonated with them or whatever it is. Like,
Oh, sure. Well, and even that, even some of the things that I do say that I don't think are very profound, right? Like I might come up with some great interpretation, well, you were feeling stuck because the way your mother treated you, whatever it might be, right? And then that falls on deaf ears. And then as they're walking out the door, I say, oh, watch your step. And then they're like, you know what? You said watch your step on my way out last time. And that really meant, I'm like, what? Whatever, if that's what works, that's what works. Great. That stuck with me. So it's funny. I guess that goes to the question of, what creates the breakthrough. There is a little bit of randomness to it. It seems like we're not really, we might think we can sort of create a breakthrough or build one, but it doesn't always seem to happen. It doesn't always seem to happen, or it happens in ways that we're not aware of.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do think therapy is great for that though, because we don't have a pre-existing connection with our clients, and we do have a bit more objectivity compared to people within their social network. So we can help them kind of piece it together a little bit. It can be a very rewarding process. Just to plug our profession there, I think it can be a great space to have that aha moment.
Sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
I would agree. It's kind of like the saying about like creating your own luck. Like, as long as you're putting yourself out there, if you're putting yourself in a situation where you might be able to stumble upon something, some nugget, some pearl of wisdom, that's great. If no one's doing any introspection at all, then it's less likely they're going to find their solution, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So back to stuckness, because Brooke, I agree with what you were saying before, that really you might be able to say that everyone who comes to therapy is feeling stuck in some way, right? And just so we're kind of, I guess, defining our terms a little bit here as well, what is it that causes us to get stuck, do you think?
I think that's a loaded question.
Mhm.
What an onion that one is, right?
Sure.
My brain's jumping right away to, early development and trauma and experiences and whatnot, right? So, for example, I have a client that's stuck in a relationship pattern, and she's aware of the pattern and whatnot, but it actually originated, which not totally surprisingly, but from her first relationship, which was, she was young, she was a teen, but emotionally, it was really an important and a really big emotional relationship for her. And she realized that he was cheating on her with her best friend.
No.
Like how she found out was very shocking to her, and it was very, it was very difficult, and she was blamed for it. And so there was loss and grief and whatnot. But then in future relationships, it was like she was going into them almost like looking for a recorrective experience. Like this time the ending's gonna be different, even though I'm putting on the same movie.
Mhm.
Without realizing she needs the courage to put on a different movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so kind of looking for that, maybe this time it will be better, and then it'll prove that I'm not flawed and I am worthy and I'm lovable. And if the ending's different, then that's going to mean something about me, right? So when I'm looking at stuckness, I'm always looking at like, what is the purpose behind the stuckness? What is the stuckness doing for you? What is it trying to tell you? And for some stuckness, I think with certain behaviors, there's like an emotional regulation purpose. But and other times like this client, where I think they're looking for a recorrective experience.
Yeah.
Or there's the trauma stuck, and it's just replaying the same trauma story over and over and over, for whatever reason, right?
Oh, for sure.
I like what you're calling a recorrective experience. There's a cool term in psychoanalytic work they call a repetition compulsion, right? So like I'm compulsively trying to repeat this thing, And a big part of it is, as you're saying, Brooke, it's like an attempt to, I want the same scenario, but I want to get it right this time, or I want it to have a better ending. I want to have an emotionally distant partner who loves me completely, right? Because maybe my parent was emotionally distant and I never felt loved, but I want to have a corrective experience where I can finally get that love from someone who is emotionally distant, And as
Yeah.
you're saying, oftentimes the big aha moment is when they realize, oh my gosh, I've been going to a dry well for years. What am I doing? I need to start going to wells with water,
Exactly. Like what I'm doing isn't working. I need to do something else. Or even just understanding that that's like an irrational way, or even focusing on those negative beliefs about the self, that like that's not how you battle those. There's other ways that isn't proof that you're worthy or lovable or whatever. Like just untying or disconnecting those two pieces.
Yeah. We are habitual beings. So I think from a neurological perspective, the whole process of myelination. So, the patterns, it's kind of like that tobogganing slope that we've talked about before. First time down the hill in fresh snow, you don't go very quickly, but second, third, fourth, or 20th or 50th time down that same track, it's going to be like an ice chute eventually, right? So it increases the chances of us exercising certain patterns, so ways of thinking or behaving or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though, because familiarity often leads to a sense of safety and security.
Mm-hmm.
And Brooke, you had a good point there too. Just with there's an emotional part to this. Like our implicit mind, our unconscious mind's a million times more powerful than our conscious mind. So sometimes these patterns develop without our knowledge of it, and it may not seem logical, but it feels right, right? So because of the implicit mind is taking control of the situation, because it takes very little mental energy for that to happen.
Yeah. So why not continue it, right?
Yeah. So stemming from those early experiences or challenges, and we develop these defense mechanisms to help us cope with it. And so it's usually a context there in terms
Mm-hmm.
of why these habits and patterns have developed the way that they have, right?
And kind of on to that, Chris, like, yeah, it's the same, like what the nervous system's used to, right? If you kind of grew up in chaos or your nervous system was used to a certain environment, sometimes you might seek, not really that implicitly, but kind of seek that out because that's what's familiar, right? You might not know what healthy relationships look like, or there might be just the chaos is what you're familiar with. It's not healthy, but there's some kind of, oddly enough, peace there, so to speak. I'm not saying people would willingly stay in anything, but it's just there's familiarity, like you said.
Yeah.
We're talking a bit about relationships here, which is certainly one of the areas that people feel stuck. And a caveat here, which is I find interesting sometimes, is speaking of therapy, because of course therapy is a relationship, and the goal of therapy is for it to be a constructive, supportive, helpful relationship for people. And oftentimes, I've worked with people in the past where they're like, oh man, I always find myself in relationships with people who are trying to take me down, or I'm just drawn to these sorts of relationships, and I'll bring in our relationship. So do you feel like I'm trying to take you down, or I'm out to get you, or I'm here to judge you? And they'll say, oh, no, but you don't count.
Yeah.
You don't count because this is just therapy, or I just pay you. So this doesn't really count as a relationship. And I've got to point out sometimes, actually, this is a relationship. Sure, there's a business component to this, but sometimes I'll say to clients, you pay me for my time and for my expertise, but you don't pay me to care. And I do. So if you don't feel that, then that's something we should talk about. But this may be part of that corrective experience that you're talking about, Brooke. Maybe this is a step in a direction of a healthier relationship, and they can get to know what this feels like and know, oh, this isn't so bad. This is actually kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
I can apply this in other places in my life.
Yeah.
People get stuck in a job. Maybe a job they don't like. They get stuck in a mindset maybe they don't like. They get a thought process going of like, oh, I feel like I'm too judgmental, or I'm too critical of people, or I beat myself up too much. And these are other ways that people get stuck sometimes too, or they get hung up on an emotion. How do you think we get there? Is it similar stuff, do you think, like from a background?
I do, because I'm
Mhm.
a little bit more in line with you that way, Ryan, like a lot more, how
Mhm.
did this develop, right? So I would want to know that, like they're kind of going down the train of like, okay, so if you're stuck at the job and you don't want to work there anymore, and well, what's the worst case scenario? Like if you leave your job, the fear, like what is the fear? What's the worst
Fear.
case scenario of that fear? But then I take it a step further to say, and then what would that mean about you?
Mhm.
So if the worst case scenario is you leave the job and you can't find out, or you can't find another position quickly, or no one hires you, I guess would be the worst case scenario.
Mhm.
What does that mean about you as a person? What's the negative belief that you're running from, right? And then where did that negative belief even start from? So if that negative belief is I'm a failure, okay, well, where in your life did you believe that that could be valid? Like, how is that? Why is that so scary? Where is that coming from? When did you experience that? Because it goes beyond just quitting the job. It's not that simple. There's probably something heavily tied to this, right? And I'm always curious, where does that go?
Mhm.
Yeah. I think the thoughts have so much to do with it in terms of keeping us stuck. Those instant beliefs. So we talk about cognitive distortions, or thinking in ways that work against us, or beliefs we have about ourselves that we can't accomplish it, or we can't do it. We're not good enough. Yeah. So shedding light on it. I'm assuming if someone's coming in there, they think they're stuck, then there's some awareness there that they're not achieving certain goals they set out for themselves. But they may not know to both your points, the cause of it, or the root of it, or what's getting in their way. They may have the intention, they may have the motivation, but the follow through is not happening.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying the thoughts, like negative self-talk, that sort of thing, where people tell themselves, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't. I couldn't possibly leave this job. I would fail at anything else." Right?
Nobody would
Yeah,
hire me. I won't be successful. I'll be unemployed.
yeah. That being said, I guess those feelings too, though, the fear. I think a lot of it really does boil down to fear. And sometimes fear is not a thought; it's just a gut feeling that you have, a sensation that's holding you back. So, I'll eat my words a little bit there and say it could be a combination of those two.
I think it's okay for them to interplay, right? The thoughts, scary thoughts, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
I guess it could be a feeling or the thoughts or combination of the two. Yeah,
Yeah.
something's happening there, and often it's within a millisecond or a split second that you decide not to engage in that change that you want to see happen.
Exactly. I'm reminded of the seems like a very popular quote these days from Anais Nin that you guys have probably heard before or seen on a tattoo or something somewhere. It says, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." Day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. So
Discomfort.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this idea of there's fear in both places, right? Being stuck in a job that you don't like is miserable, but it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't know, right? What's going to happen if I leave here? And at some point, a lot of times people are kind of waiting for that boiling point to occur, where it's like, oh, now I'm so uncomfortable in this job. Now I will finally take that leap.
Yeah,
Because leaping is scary, but I'm more scared of the unknown. So I'll stay in a miserable job instead of leave it because I'd rather know what I'm dealing with,
Mhm.
for sure. So that motivation may shift in drastic ways.
Mm-hmm.
Something, a big life event could happen, I know a lot of people, it might be medical. So if it has to do with their physical health and decisions that they're making, that could lead to it. I know when it comes to addiction, sometimes hitting that rock bottom will shift that perspective a bit and propel people to make some changes. So yeah, I think it can be that big thing, or it could be those really subtle changes too, which we have to, that often becomes the focus of therapy too.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. You're right. Yes. I mean, there are a lot of people who become very, very healthy after a heart attack, right? And it's like that wake up call that they kind of need, like, oh my gosh, what was I doing? I need to, life is precious. I need to treat it that way. Or like you said, like with addiction, or, a relationship that just needs to sour just enough, needs to get so rotten that you have to leave,
Yeah.
So I do think that's true. I guess that's one way to look at, like, the discomfort gets so bad that you are then forced to change, because changing is scary, and fear holds us back.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
also needs to be some confidence, I think, when we're talking about the breakthrough part. Some confidence in yourself that you are resilient, that you do have courage and strength, and you're able to make change. You can figure it out. You can troubleshoot. You can grow, and being assured in yourself of that, and that you have a support network to help you, and there's all these different resources available. And I think that's a part of the preparation for the breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody might, yeah, it's interesting what the final moments of, like, the last straw is for people. It could be something small, it could be something big, but I think before that moment happens, there's been a lot of mental preparation of looking at things, or yeah, whether it's looking at job postings or self-help books or healthier ways of eating or whatever. And then there's a final straw moment where it's like, I can do this.
Yeah.
Enough. This is enough. I'm going to move forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Have we talked about motivational interviewing here before?
I think it's been
remember,
mentioned, but we haven't done like a podcast on it.
Right.
like, the stages of change stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Stages of change, and then also, stages of change is interesting, because that's where we look at people who are considering whether or not they want to change something about their life. Say you want to quit smoking, right? And someone says, well, yeah, I've heard smoking's kind of a bad thing for you, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway. So they're in a very, what we would call pre-contemplative phase, right? They're not really even considering changing. They just kind of are aware that maybe it's a good idea. And then kind of going up the levels there, someone who's like, yeah, I really would like to change, I'm just not ready yet. Or yeah, I definitely want to change, just not right now. Or
I can see how smoking's bad. It's probably not that, like, starting to see the risk in the behavior, or why that behavior might need to change, the reasons for change start coming up next.
Yeah. And then it's, yes, I definitely want to change. Maybe I don't have the tools, or I need some help, or something like that. People are more motivated to do it. And the whole field of motivational interviewing kind of comes along and tries to assess that, and then asks somebody, and this is usually applied in addiction fields. You would ask someone, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to change this? And they would say 6. And then they would ask, okay, well, why is it a 6 and not a 0? Well, because I do want to change it to some degree. Okay, then why is it a 6 and not a 10? Well, because I don't really want to change it. It's like, I'm scared I won't fail. I'm scared of,
I like it.
I like it too much. I don't really want to leave it behind. That sort of thing. And then so let's say that you keep doing the same thing that you're doing. What would that be like in 5 years and 10 years? Oh, that would be horrible. Well, what's going to get you to do this so it's really taking a microscopic look at that motivation and that change process, and saying, what do you really want in your life? And oftentimes this helps people to make big, significant shifts, at least when it comes to negative behaviors and addictions.
Great
And
summary.
Is
Mhm.
that a good summary? I'll put a link in the podcast for it. There's a lot of great stuff with motivational interviewing.
Yeah.
It's people. It kind of developed as an alternative to AA, to 12-step groups and like Alcoholics Anonymous, because it doesn't include a higher power or anything like that. It's just taking a look very closely at your motivation, and a lot of people find it beneficial.
It also normalizes that it's not linear. When we're looking at the
Mhm.
stages of change model, you're not going to necessarily go through the stages in order and then stay in those stages. You might jump back and forth
Mhm.
throughout the day or even the hour, or depending on the stress level or whatever it is. And they also normalize sometimes falling back into old patterns or old habits, and that trying to take that judgment away to say that's okay, that's a normal part of the process, let's get you back on track, let's not get
Yes.
restuck, let's acknowledge it and move forward, and maybe that change process will happen a little quicker the second time.
Sure. It also really normalizes a bit of ambivalence, like
Yes.
people, if someone says, hey, I'd like to start working out, it's easy to point to them and say, well, why aren't you doing it then? It's not all or nothing. People have ambivalence. They part of me wants to, part of me doesn't want to, or I'm 60% there but not 100% there. And this just helps you to acknowledge that, accept it, take a look at it, and say, all right, what do I really want for my life? Yeah.
And sometimes as therapists, we get stuck. I think you mentioned that before a bit.
No, we don't. What are you talking about?
Yeah, like we might be aware that clients are stuck and try to help them through it, but sometimes it's good to just reflect if therapy is stagnant, or if we feel like we're just at a loss of how to help someone. Yeah, it happens more often than not sometimes, and so it's just good to whether consultation or kind of just check in about what is it that I'm having trouble with this client, and kind of do some work there. So that happens on our side too. It's not just the client.
Absolutely. And that's why as therapists, we oftentimes have our own therapy. We have supervisors or consultants. We have colleagues that we run ideas by. We go to workshops and read books and continuing education stuff, so that we can try to recognize the places where we're stuck maybe, and are able to say, hey, I need to get some help here. What are my blind spots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. We lose objectivity when it comes to our own lives. So you need that outsider perspective at times, clinically as well as personally.
That is absolutely true. Yes. I had a colleague who lost a close loved one in the last few years, and they actually, the people in their own caseload who were dealing with grief, they decided that they weren't going to be able to work with them objectively, so they referred them out temporarily for other help, which I thought, that's an interesting move, to say, hey, look, I don't, this hits too close to home. I think I'm going to bring too much of my own pain into this work, and so for the next month or two, why don't you consult with a colleague of mine instead of me? And that was a good move for them, which I think is good care for themselves and good care for their clients.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Gradual change versus breakthrough, right? We've been talking a lot about breakthroughs and about how we maybe can facilitate this, but we've talked before about habits and small changes that people can make in their lives, as we talk about self-care, all these different things that we talk about to help people, make kind of incremental, gradual change. Do you think these are in opposition, these ideas of breakthrough versus gradual change? Do you think they work together? What do you
I
feel
think you
about
have to
that?
define what a breakthrough is. Like, are you saying a breakthrough is like change that happens quickly, or is a breakthrough a moment of clarity with an aha moment, but that's more cognitive than it is behavioral. Like,
Sure.
and can you do the behavioral without the cognitive? Like, I'm thinking about a friend that continually, I've known this friend, oh gosh, I don't even know how long now, 25 years. And she's always trying to quit smoking, right? So then a breakthrough moment in behavior would be her being like, that's it, I'm gonna quit smoking. And there she goes. She decides no longer to smoke. But what do you know, in a month or whatever, she's smoking again. So is that a breakthrough because the behavior changed? Or is it the moment where it's like, I don't want my lungs to be like this. This is not okay. Kind of that deeper, whatever that might be. And then making the behavior change. Like, what do you think, Ryan? What is a breakthrough?
I guess I see it as the whole package there. It's like I come to a light bulb moment, a cognitive breakthrough, and then as a result, my behavior changes, right? Like, oh my gosh, I've been, my whole career has been based on my grandfather's dreams and not about my own life. And so, damn it, I'm going to start doing things for myself, right? So then they chart that course and go for it. Or suddenly they say, I am sick and tired of being, out of shape. So I'm going to run an ultra marathon. So boom, off and they go do it. Again, these are rare and often not that dramatic, but sometimes people come to these big kind of life-changing insights that actually result in major change in their life.
I'd like to add to that breakthrough, like an emotional breakthrough opposed to a cognitive.
Well, there we go. Sure.
We do those, or I like those. My clients probably find them very uncomfortable, but that moment where you hit the spot where they needed to maybe release emotion and
Sure.
has been pent up, and there's typically a lot of tears
Mm-hmm.
or something, a visceral physical response happens, and it's typically a big one. And then they're good. Something
Yeah.
changes after that. Yeah.
Yes, I will second and third and fourth that one. Emotional breakthroughs are some of the bigger ones in therapy, especially, right? Something's been kind of pent up, held back, finally, and often out of fear or out of some
Or grief or
irrational
loss.
belief or loss. It's something that's there that I'm holding on to because I don't want to lose control, or I don't want to go nuts, or I don't want to look foolish, or whatever that might be. And then they finally say, okay, I'm ready to let that guard down, and boom, it all comes crashing out. Very cathartic, very, very healthy, healing stuff comes from that. Those are big
Yes.
moments.
Mhm. Okay, so breakthrough, better versus slow change. What's better?
I don't know that it's an either or, but I just wondered if they need to be in opposition, or they can they work together? Can they be friends?
I think they could be friends. Sorry, Chris, you look like you're about to go there.
No, I'm just breathing.
I know. Yeah, gosh, I think if you have to kind of be open, ideally there might be a breakthrough if you feel like it's a necessary thing. Sometimes there's clients who are kind of on the slow change train, and their breakthrough might happen that could expedite things, but sometimes it might just be slow moving and kind of hit barrier after barrier and kind of, and that could just be what therapy is, right? Or it could be like a breakthrough, and then maybe the behavior doesn't, or there isn't a huge shift, but then that kind of opens a new door. And so I don't think they're in opposition. I think it's, they're both good in their own way.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of depends on the individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it could be a combination, or it could be one or the other.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was going to say too, like, there are some ways to increase the probability of having a breakthrough. I read a while ago that spending time in nature increases the chances of having a breakthrough. Being open and talking to people getting different perspectives from people in your life. So a variety of perspectives can also lead to a breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
I'm not sure if you guys have heard anything else, but those are a couple that popped in my mind.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think you're talking about, some things that are some people find very helpful are what they call experiential weekends, right? Whether it's like a couples weekend, or sometimes like there's a group down here called Outward Bound, where they go and do like climbing adventures and hiking adventures, and like have a solo day where you have to kind of spend time. But these are very experiential things that people attend, and it's often a very behavioral thing, and there's a lot of kind of pushing towards emotional, pushing on emotional barriers, trying to elicit some breakthroughs. They come with some mixed reviews. Some people say, yeah, they're kind of pushing too hard. It was maybe it felt like it was I was fabricating my emotions or whatever that might be. But I know that some people really do have some profound change at some of these experiences. And if any listeners have been on experiences like that, they can write us at info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com and let us know, because I'd be curious to know. Now, I've had a lot of clients who've gone on some of these sorts of weekends, and they found that it was really powerful. Even if it feels a little contrived, it can still kind of get into kind of breakthrough moments.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, often having a group of people together, displaying emotion, or sharing personal stories can create maybe a dynamic for growth and change.
Yes.
Mixed reviews, of course, but
there was actually an article in Psychotherapy Networker a year or two ago about one of our reporters went to a family constellation group, they called it, right? And family constellation is where you go and you use participants. There's like 20 people there, and you use people to kind of make a psychodrama, right? They like pull people out of the crowd to represent, okay, you're going to be like my mom, you're going to be my dad, I'm going to position you in this way in the room, and you're going to kind of interact in these ways. And by doing that, they kind of recreate some experiences from their past, and can have some big revelations and some big breakthroughs as well. I'm not really all that familiar with that modality, but some of those things that are intentionally kind of pushing for those experiences, I think, can be helpful for some people.
Yeah, it's by design, I've heard too.
Yeah.
Kind of curious, more of a therapy question. Are there certain theories within psychology that are more designed for breakthrough moments versus those who are designed for more gradual change?
Ooh. Like EMDR for rapid breakthrough?
EMDR, I know Ryan's a psychodynamic psychologist, often looking at the why and putting those pieces together. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of our go-to techniques, is often a little more gradual. So awareness of patterns and structured ways to shift and change.
I mean, it's interesting you put it that way, Chris, because one of the things that psychodynamic work is known for is long-term therapy, that builds, it's known for several years, many years of people working, and it's a lot about the therapeutic relationship and how are we interact with each other and kind of what emerges. They say that like therapy is kind of a microcosm. What happens in your life will also happen in therapy. So it's kind of a slower burn in some ways, but also the interpretations that we give are supposed to kind of elicit some light bulbs, right? So you're scared of me. You were also scared of your mother, and maybe that's why you're scared of your wife, or whatever that might be, right?
Yeah.
And those kind of those moments can be enlightening. There's one form of dynamic therapy. It's called intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy, which is supposed to be like 12 sessions long, and it is incredibly intense. And the therapist and the client are sitting face to face, pretty close to each other, and the therapist is just pointing out like every defense mechanism that the client has. Like, oh, you're using humor. Get back to your feelings. Why are you avoiding the topic? You're paying me hundreds of dollars for this therapy. Why are you wasting our time? I mean, really confrontational. They actually call the intervention a head-on collision. And
wow.
And the idea is that that's supposed to really
traumatized and
Well, for
and then you
some,
refer them to a colleague who then treats them for 5 years?
We're on to you.
they actually I don't do this work.
I know.
They screen people very much so. So they hope they're not going to be traumatized. They have to take some of this very strong confrontation. But but the idea is that you're going to break down the defenses really quickly and get to what's really going on within a few sessions.
Yeah.
Not my line of work, but so anyway, that's a great question, Chris. What creates some more of these breakthroughs? And so psychodynamic stuff on the one hand, way too long. On the other hand, the interpretations are supposed to turn on some light bulbs.
Yeah.
In your talk, I missed the talk about therapy and kind of was it media or mainstream kind of media? Do you talk about Good Will Hunting?
It
Yes.
came up.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just like rapid fire. What about this show and this
okay.
movie and this? Oh man,
I
there's
thought about
probably
breakthrough
120.
in terms of like Robin Williams saying, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." No, he just kept going, and then it was just this big thing. Anyways, I think about that as he kind of pushed it there because, anyways, Matt Damon was.
That's a great example.
But he just kept going. He kept, and he was put in an uncomfortable position, but he had that breakthrough. But they had been seeing each other for a while too, so there's a lot of stuff going on there. But anyways,
I think it's a great example of the emotional breakthrough, right? I mean, Matt Damon had not cried, he hadn't gone to any of his pain, and then Robin Williams pushed him there. I mean, literally pushed him in this movie a couple times, but yeah, then he had this breakthrough, and then suddenly he was fine. I'm going to California later.
Yeah.
That's a good reminder that movies and pop culture can provide opportunities for these breakthroughs as well. But I think breakthrough is a lot more exciting of a topic. That's why we're not talking about more of the gradual change. A lot of
True.
But I think a breakthrough is part of the gradual change process.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. Because I like the stages of change. So in the stages of change, one of those stages is preparation. And I think that people do a lot of preparation. They think a lot about their change. They might research or read or get feedback from friends or family or whatever that might be. There's a huge preparation piece. And then there's something where that final straw happens, where the breakthrough moment, and then behavior change happens after that. So I think seeing the change after the breakthrough, you feel like it's rapid, but this person might have been on this process for 6 years.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So there's a bit of a breakthrough in terms of increasing motivation to change, and then that change could be gradual beyond that point.
Well, the change would have started when they started thinking about changing.
Yeah.
So they might have been thinking about doing something for years, and that's all the preparation, right? But then maybe there's this pivotal moment, whether it's cognitively thinking about something a different way, or learning a new piece of information, or being scared by something, and then all of a sudden the behavior change happens, and we're like, wow, that was really rapid, but you don't see behind closed doors that they've been working on this for years.
Yeah,
totally. Yes, I guess I was kind of a leading question there, because I have my own idea, I guess, about this idea too of gradual change versus breakthrough, and some of it has to do with the media stuff, because the media, what was shown in movies and on TV, like Dr. Phil is all about the breakthrough, the one episode breakthrough. Come on in, you got a messed up life, let me throw some platitudes at you and we'll hug it out and everything's better, right? And it's all about this quick fix breakthrough, and a lot of movies are certainly about that too, and I don't blame them. That's entertainment. It's better viewing than a lot of what therapy really is, which is gradual change and over slow burn over a long amount of time. But I'll say of my life, of my couple decades plus of therapy, it's been a lot of slow gradual change punctuated by, gosh, a half dozen breakthrough moments, that were big breakthroughs for me. Like, oh wow, this is great. That doesn't mean I'm done with the work. That doesn't mean I'm stopping introspecting, like I suddenly have the one answer and now I can leave, like Good Will Hunting. It's more like, oh, that was a big moment. Things all kind of came together. I understand more. And now I can integrate that into my life, and now I can continue the work. Now I can keep looking deeper and see what else is in there, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, that's kind of what it's been like for me. Those breakthrough moments are cool. They're powerful, but you know, I don't think you can just hope that that's all that life is going to be, or that's all that therapy is going to be.
Very true. No, I totally agree. A lot of it is that gradual change. But there's a lot of people that they have the perspective, they have the motivation, but they come back and they say, oh, I didn't really do anything to work towards that. So, you know, I know we talked about habit change in the past, but having external accountability can be helpful, and trying to disrupt
Sure.
patterns, or tacking on new patterns to existing ones can be helpful too. But often coming up with a bit of a game plan and taking some steps, because often there's a fallacy there. I think that we just think that we can change things absolutely drastically. Maybe that can happen with one of these aha breakthrough moments, but to your point, Ryan, it's often a longer process there. So,
I mean, life is pretty long. We can't have a breakthrough every day, can we? You got to just keep plugging along. A lot of times, then we have these big moments. So,
yeah.
So, hope that that answered my questions, you guys. You helped me understand stuckness and breakthroughs a lot better.
Me too.
I appreciate all your feedback. That was good stuff. So
No,
let's.
That was a good one. That was a good one for sure.
Well, cool. Well, let's wrap it up for now then, if we will, and we will say good night, everybody.
Good night,
And
everyone.
we'll
Good
say
night. Thanks for listening.
thanks for listening, and send your questions to info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com, or visit us on Facebook, Instagram. Tell a friend or two, or anyone who needs a breakthrough, send them to our podcast. All right. And thank you for continuing your repetition compulsion for listening to our podcast. And we will say goodnight, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.